Malo Lele, Talofa, Aloha, and Bula. And whoever else is out there, we welcome you to another episode of the Polynesian Eyes podcast, a digital live Kava session. Mr.
Mm,
Aotearoa, how are you? Looks like it's raining in the land of
yes,
the long white cloud. I can see it
and
in the
you
background.
right there. Yeah, you can
Yes.
see. So it's been raining all day. It's part of our winter. For those who are familiar with Seattle, Washington, Oregon kind of weather during the winter, it's a lot of rain and cold. So yeah, it's been raining the whole day today. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
How
So
about
it's
you?
basically it's been hot. It's been, I mean, hot comparatively speaking. It could be worse. It's been
Mm,
in the high 90s. Last week it was in the hundreds. So hey, God's love you, Toko
God
Malo.
love
Welcome,
you. Oh,
welcome. So it's been good. Just been a long week. As I was mentioning, sometimes coworkers just want to drive you crazy. It's nice to have a Friday and
yep.
to meet the
Recover,
brothers. Yeah, meet
recover.
meet the brothers and sisters on the digital kava session and hopefully have some good discussion. So we welcome everybody today. We have some different topics. We'll start off with some general news that's going on in the Pacific. There's been a handful of articles that came across our desk. We'll call it
Mm,
our podcast desk. We'll talk about those. Actually, a couple of them are in Fiji. Some
oh,
interesting
sure.
developments out in Fiji. Also, one of I think, okay, this may be a debate. And since Masi's in Aotearoa, this, I know everybody who's the All Blacks fans not gonna like this comment, but the greatest flanker of all time is not Richie McCaw, in my opinion. It is George Smith. And I will, maybe that will be our hot debate for to start off. Um,
Okay,
and
okay.
and and for me, the big reason is this: not only longevity, right, but the guy who has impacted. Besides Michael Jones, I think Michael Jones was the last one to really have a huge impact on flanker. But the guy who you changed the rules not once, not twice, but many times, three times, was because of how effective George Smith was in the breakdown in poaching the ball, right? Like literally the rules on you had to let go of the tackler of the ball carrier on the ground. That was George Smith. They realigned how you enter and come through
Mm,
the ruck for the defense. It was because of George Smith. I mean, they changed the rules so many times. And each time they changed the rule, George Smith just adapted his strategy. And,
mm,
and he would go in and he would steal the ball five, six, 9 times, I think, 9 or 10 times in the game. And that's
okay.
huge. That dramatically impacts the team, And
Yeah.
so for me, George Smith is the greatest flanker of all time, in my opinion. Granted, it may be a little biased because he's Polynesian, he's Tongan, half Tongan. But for you, Mussy, anyone, do you have any opinion on who the best flanker of all time is, or are you going to jump into the Richie McCaw bandwagon?
No, no, I agree with you. George Smith is the person I've heard a lot growing up of being very impactful, especially turnovers, taking the ball away. Um, you know, so I mean, I agree with that. I agree with that. I have no objection to that. Um, Richie McCaw was just, I think what he does have was the, like you kind of mentioned, was the longevity for sure. Playing as long and being captain is a big deal for a team that's probably considered the most winningest, well, most winning
Professional
team
team of all time. Yeah.
of all time. So I mean that carries weight. So, but yeah, I guess as impact player, George Smith. I'll go George Smith as a flanker. So,
Alexander Vainicolo Malo,
hello,
welcome,
hello, Alex.
welcome. Here's another interesting thing. I don't have that video pegged, but I was watching um a couple of like Matt Gitto and a couple other of the Wallabies doing a podcast, and then they started talking about George Smith,
Mm,
right? And the the topic that they were discussing was is is how Australian rugby right now approaches identifying like new talent missing the mark, right? Where it's kind of like, the NFL sometimes is caught up in this where they're so caught up with the measurables, right?
Mm.
Oh, if you're a quarterback and you're not above 6'1" or 6'2", then how can you be
Mm.
quarterback, right? And then you have guys like Russell Wilson, what's his name, the quarterback that retired for the Saints, Drew Bledsoe,
Breeze. Drew
or
Breeze.
Drew Brees. Drew Brees, these guys, smaller guys, win Super Bowls, do great things. And basically, the Wallaby guys we're talking about, they're like, here's a prime example, right?
Mm.
When you would measure George Smith in doing sprints and timing him, he was not off the charts,
Mm.
right? He was actually, they would say, kind of mediocre or maybe slightly below mediocre. But when he was in a game,
Yeah.
he was like off the charts in production, right? And they were kind of mentioning, just imagine if the selections that are going now, and maybe that's part of the problem that um,
The Wallabies.
Australian rugby is going through. Not only do they have some structural and cultural issues, right? But then the way that they're selecting their talent is overlooking at what we call the tangible things, the measurables, and they're not looking at the intangible things and how the impact of the team. But that was one of the guys that they mentioned directly was George Smith, and they were like, this guy was off the charts performing during the games. But if you were just to measure him off of the sprints and stuff they did, that guy may not even have made the team. So that was
Mm.
kind of an
Mm.
interesting topic.
No, and that isn't that like the same thing? Like some guys who do the NFL draft workouts, they're not eye popping. Kind of Tom
Mhm.
Brady was part of that. That's why he was
Yeah,
so low.
exactly,
He didn't.
exactly.
He was kind of scrawny. His highlights were very mediocre.
Slow,
His
yeah,
bench press and his vertical jump was, below par, right? And what he is the considered one of the he's probably the greatest probably player, in my opinion. This is probably
yeah,
greatest NFL player, and
of
he's
all
already up
time.
of all time. And not only that, I think he's gone up to like compared to the other national sports as probably being one of the tops, like to the Michael Jordan, in my opinion. That's
Yeah,
just my opinion to the Michael Jordans and the other sports, greatest of all time. So, hey, yeah, I mean, same thing. And didn't George Smith just recently go to Tonga? He was part of the coaching team with the Reds, and
yeah.
the
That's the
Reds team.
video. That's the video we're gonna take a look at. I didn't know this, but apparently he went to school at Toloa.
I did hear about it. Yes, I
So
did hear
maybe he
about
what he
him
go
go.
for like a year, maybe just do a 1 year stint in
Yeah,
Tonga.
is his mother Tongan or something like
Yes.
that? Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe it's his mother. So, with that being said, we will jump into the first news article that we'll take a look at. And this was interesting. Google's to build a $200 million data center in Fiji. That's
Whoa.
a big deal. That is a big
Whoa.
deal.
That's a lot of injection to the Fijian
Hmm.
economy right there. That money.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool. I mean, that's probably going to be like the pretty much the data center for probably for the Pacific region, right?
Mm.
Rather than shipping it all up to overseas, maybe they'll do a lot of that processing and data management and AI and all that stuff maybe
Mm.
out of this data center. So that
Mm.
was pretty cool to see. And the other thing that was interesting is they're also bringing in four more additional cables, deep sea cables.
Where they're gonna be running from Fiji
So,
to
so they have it. Where did I just see it? Cable runs from Fiji to Australia. Another cable is going to run from Australia to French Polynesia, Tahiti,
mm,
South America, and Chile.
okay. That's interesting. They're investing in the whole cable stuff because I would think they would start to try to do satellite. That's the
Yes.
okay.
Well, and
Interesting.
that's the thing that'll be interesting because I was looking at listening to the CEO of Starlink.
Yeah.
Like they were saying, hey, we can have certain customers, let's say in a big city like New York. What they say, but we can't serve all of New York, right?
Mm,
But Fiji and the Polynesia is not New York. I would assume that Starlink could
sure.
facilitate
Mm,
a lot, if not all, the market there. And then it looks like there's another one. Where's the other one? Another cable will run from Fiji to Guam and then to Japan.
okay.
So
The
this
mess-
is this is big news, man. I mean, this will make a big deal not only for Fiji because of the investment that they're going to get, but also potentially lead to greater opportunity for the Pacific overall. So that was pretty cool news. Any thoughts on that,
mm.
Mussy?
No, no. I was just curious on that they're heavily invested in the cable, running through under the Pacific Ocean and that because just with Tonga's experience with the whole movement of tectonic plates under the ocean and
And a lot, yeah. What Tonga's
just the
problems had
unpredict.
the last
Yes,
couple months.
yes, and I was just thinking, I don't know, but I don't know because I was just thinking maybe because the Polynesian nations are relatively small, and I thought maybe they would focus more on maybe satellite, as it's been more reliable and less interruption. But hey, we'll see how it goes. Maybe those guys, it's gonna have stronger cable, and maybe we'll be able to withstand a lot of the effects of nature that will throw it at them. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see. Alex has a comment. You guys taking King Alpha level heat. It is hilarious, Alex. It is hilarious. And we'll talk about it. It's the kind of heat that's kind of like it's kind of like comical, right? That's the way I look at it, Alex. Is this we go in and this is we've had this discussion before, right? You sit down with someone and you say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And then they tell you their whole position and everything, and you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, this is my position, right? And I believe X, Y, and Z." And then they go, "Well, why do you believe that?" And I say, "Oh, because here's some geological studies, here's some history that kind of expresses my position, and then there's also some oral history that kind of matches certain parts of it." And then you ask them, "Well, what kind of studies do you have?" "Oh, my grandfather's father said this one time when we were hanging under the coconut tree, therefore it must be true." And then they accuse you of, "Well, your belief Tua doesn't make any sense." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I at least have some scientific studies, I have some historical fact, and I have oral history, and all you have is some oral history, and yet I'm the one that doesn't have enough, evidence to express my position." And then the other one, Alex, that we get is this: "You are so disrespectful. You are so," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're saying I'm disrespectful for questioning the Tu'imanua, and yet I could say the exact same thing, that you're disrespectful to the Tu'itonga and the Tongan oral history." It's kind of comical. That's
It
my
is.
thoughts.
It is.
Any thoughts on that, Mussy? Because I know
I,
you're definitely a favorite on TikTok. I always know if I cut up a video and Mussy speaking, I know that's gonna get me at least 600 views within a day. Within a day.
that's funny. No, I haven't been following too much to the last couple of weeks. I try to check the TikTok here and there, but it's been a while since I haven't checked because just with life. But like, I mean, you kind of mentioned it. I'm I'm comfortable presenting our ideas and our perspective, and we'll see what everyone got. And then if it's just like what you said, we have a diversified data point. We don't just stick to just oral history because you did mention how oral history can conflict and it can be inaccurate because then everyone is having their own thing and it's not accurate. But we've you know kind of diversify our data point with the the ruins and also the government structure along with the oral history that it's pretty sound, in my opinion. But we shall see, and we'll just let whatever idea is more sound to rise up. So
Yeah.
that's just
And
my
like we
thought.
said, we like the ideas to fight in the arena, you know?
Mm,
I feel
mm,
like our ideas have pretty good knockout power, and the other guys think they have knockout power, but we present it and, everybody can make up their own mind.
yeah.
The next topic is this one. This one I thought was interesting. Record number of Fijians heading overseas. The
Mm,
researchers say they think it could be temporary. But over the last 2 years, 40,000 more Fijians have departed the country, then returned. It's forced the Fijian government to raise the retirement age. Like
hmm,
that's pretty significant, right? I
that
mean, when
is
it gets to the point that it's impacting policy and how people are living their lives, it's obviously serious enough. um I'm
mm,
interested to see why they think it's temporary. I don't know. Usually when somebody goes overseas, it ain't temporary, at least from our experience, right? I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
Fiji, because it's a bigger economy, a bigger country, maybe it's a little bit different than what I
Mm,
typically see from Tonga.
mm.
But any thoughts on that, Mussy?
Yeah, well, Fiji's interesting because they have quite a big population of Indians, which is a lot different than our Polynesians. When we travel, you will usually just travel for a very long time. Usually, when we return, it's usually just to visit family. But that's a little different population there in Fiji. So when they say Fijians, I'm assuming it's a
Oh yeah, it's
big
across the
group
board. Yeah.
because I'll give you an example, Dua. When I go to Fiji from Auckland to Fiji to have my layover, then go to America. 80% of the flight are Indian Fijians. So like even
Mm,
coming back to Auckland, 80 to 90% are Indians. So it's a I know it's a big migration, and it could
ah.
be maybe
So
a lot of the Indian population maybe migrating over to other places, and then
okay.
I don't know. I don't know. That's just my thoughts of my personal experiences with
No,
going
that's
to
an
Fiji.
interesting observation. So it could be nationality Fijian, but ethnically mostly Indian, going out looking for other opportunities. Interesting.
Probably,
That's an
probably,
interesting point.
yeah,
They do mention here, um, I think with this high level of migration, things are definitely getting more difficult in Fiji. This is Sharon Liu, a research officer there in Fiji. There's a strong push within Fiji domestically for people to get out because they want a better life. The ultimate solution is for Fiji to create more stable job opportunity. I mean, this is pretty much across the board in Polynesia in general. I don't think this is
yeah,
uniquely a Fijian problem, but it did kind of surprise me because I had always been under the assumption that Fiji was a much larger economy and country. But same thing I think with New Zealand. Seeing a lot of people in New Zealand migrate to Australia. So
mhm,
even in a larger country and even a larger economy as New Zealand is seeing this, people are just migrating to where there's more opportunity.
yeah, and just for their skill too, because I know Tonga was having some issues finding some laborers, because it's starting to affect Tonga's hospitality sector because people were going on these visas for
Oh,
6 month, a year visas to work in the farms in Australia and
yeah, they
New
pay
Zealand.
better. Yeah,
Yes, and then if they are good workers, the employer would
holds on to them.
extend hold on to them and they extend their visa to resident, and then they would lose quite skillful workers and good workers from Tonga because I think because when I talked to Danny, he was building his house in Tonga. It was very difficult for him to find laborers.
Skilled
A lot of them
labor.
skilled laborers. So he had to kind of really look hard for some good workers. Most of them were leaving, going out overseas for the picking.
Mm,
And to me, when you get that opportunity to go overseas and you do
you
well
gotta take
and
it.
you get a
Yeah.
resident, a lot of them will stay. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what didn't really make sense to me in this last part, but researchers say exodus could be temporary. I don't know what that doesn't make sense to me, right?
Mm,
Because once you find an opportunity overseas, typically
yeah,
everybody that we know says we're going to take it, and we're
yeah,
I love you family, I'll send some dollar bills back to help with what's going on. um Let's see. Got a couple more comments popping up. Yeah, Malo Popo. God loves you. I appreciate it. Hey, Orator, welcome. Also, I
Hello,
appreciate it from Malo. Thank you for the support. All the way from Aussie, the land down under. Mount
hello,
Druitt.
hello,
Where is that?
Orator.
Is that New South Wales, or are you a Queenslander, Orator? I wonder which one you go for over there.
West. I think he's probably West Sydney.
Oh,
Maybe I'm just guessing.
okay.
I've I've been to Australia once, and when I stay in Sydney is with my family in West Side, West Sydney. So I'm just assuming. And they told me most of the Polynesian population in Sydney stays out
In
west.
West. Okay. All right. All right. So yeah, that was an interesting
That is
article
interesting.
that popped
Mm.
up. Let's see, we got a couple more that I wanted to take a look at. We do have a video there that we were considering. Here's another interesting one. This is more with sports and Jerome Luai. He's pretty much confirming his allegiance to the Toa Samoa.
Oh, big
So
news. That's good
yeah,
news.
yeah. So he will be going to England. He said, "Yep, I'll be there." And he's just talking about how he's dedicated to Samoa and that
Absolutely.
tour, and how he wants to inspire the next generation of young Samoan athletes to to play for
Mm.
Samoa.
Awesome.
Um, and here's the interesting thing. On top of that, what he's suggesting is NRL expansion for a Pacifica team based out of the Polynesian teams. So basically, Tonga Samoa, kind of like the Moana Pacifica,
Ah,
for the NRL, and he thinks that would
yeah.
definitely be a positive thing. I think that would be cool, and it
I think
would it would be an
yeah,
interesting pathway to kind of
yeah.
draw on some of the domestic talent in Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga. And honestly, that will put a lot of pressure on World Rugby, right? On the
Mm,
union things, because if they set that up and the NRL is able to establish direct from the grassroots in Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. And I think a lot of the youth is gonna, the NRL is kind of exciting. It's kind of on the pop culture. Just look at the Warriors, right?
they
I
lost
mean,
again, Tua. The Warriors lost again.
man. So no more top eight. That's pretty
No,
much
I don't think
done.
so. Yeah,
Oh well.
yeah.
Let me. Was at least the stadium sold out again?
Well, this was away. They played at Manly.
Oh, they played at
So
Manly.
yeah, yeah.
So I think this is pretty cool, man. I would be.
Mm.
I think this is really good. It doesn't pull away from other markets in Australia, right? And it could be an interesting pathway. So I think this is cool. I'm hoping they can work it out. They might have to do something similar to the Moana Pacifica, but it would be great. I mean, and maybe even include PNG, right? Because the
Mm,
PNG has a very strong domestic game and good structure, and PNG has a big economy. So
yeah.
that could be interesting. What are your thoughts,
Um.
Masi?
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, I th- I think they can expand because right now they've got 17. Right? Is it 17
Mm-hmm.
franchises in the NRL? Me personally, I think PNG they're because of how excited and how I think they've sold out a lot of their games are in PNG are really
Yeah,
doing well with rugby league. So I'm pretty sure they can probably do well on its own if they. I mean, if they need to put it together, Polynesians, hey, go ahead. But I think we can go separate and just develop that way. Just in my opinion.
yeah, because the
But
PNG team is pretty strong. They could probably
yes,
field their own team.
yes, and financially, I think they'll be fine
Yeah.
too. But I'm just thinking, where would you think is the best location to base the Polynesian NRL team franchise? I would
Prob
think I, Auckland, because I mean,
Yeah, I would say New Zealand is probably the safest bet. Um, and maybe they share Mount Smart and they just
w-
work on some scheduling so
yeah,
that, when the Warriors are playing at home,
yeah,
the other team's traveling, and then vice versa. Whenever the
yeah.
Warriors are away, these guys play at home. That would be
No,
interesting.
no, that's awesome because to me personally, I would support. something like that, because it will benefit and just develop more kids to play for Tosa Moa Matematonga teams. I'm see to me, I wouldn't be. That's why the Moana Pacifica teams, no one really goes. I think the fan base understands it's good to develop the ones for the teams, but we all know if you're going to be good enough, the All Blacks and even Australia Wallabies, because they play in that
Hmm.
same competition, they'll pick you, and you're gonna go and play for them if you're good. So that's why I think the Moana Pacifica has a really. I mean, we'll see if RD has that push, but I have my doubts on it, because I'm pretty sure the audience is pretty smart. That yes, you're playing. Yes, it's good you play games and stuff, but you're not really helping the national teams talent wise, because we know the All Blacks and Wallabies are gonna get first dibs if you're good enough, and then once you play for them, you lose 2 years if you're gonna
Yeah,
sit out and then you don't play again. So that's my thing about the union side. But the NRL, it's straight up. Hey, you're gonna get paid well, and you're gonna have a good following. There's not going to be that thing like, oh, if you get picked for another team, you're still going to have an opportunity
you're
to play
stuck. Yeah,
for Patima
exactly.
Tonga, because one, you don't have to do a stand down if you're not picked for the other team. So to me, I think the fan base of Polynesians will really rally behind the NRL
Hmm.
Polynesian team, in my opinion, because there's a reason to it. Because I've been to that Mona Pacifica game with my wife, and we went to Mount Smart Stadium. If it's about 30,000, I'm telling you, maybe 100 people were sitting there
Wow.
watching. Like
Wow.
it's sad, and I'm just saying, this is what I mean. It's this union has this philosophy of we'll just create this product here, and then people will just follow. It's like, no, people have brains. They're not gonna do that. And yeah, but this Polynesian NRL team, I feel like, well, people will rally behind it, because it will help. It will help their heritage nations. But that's just me.
That's a good point, right? I mean, the Mona Pacifica, the idea is good, but the infrastructure doesn't change
No,
anything
no, it doesn't.
on the international game, right? Because
No,
like you said, if you play on Mona Pacifica and you do really well, the Wallabies or the All Blacks are going to take you're going to take that, right? And
yes,
then once you take that, then you're stuck like Charles Piutau and
yeah,
Malakai Fekitoa and all
yeah,
these guys, and then they end up just saying, you know what, I'm just going to go to Europe or
and play
Japan or
there. Yeah,
something and just play there. I gotta maximize whatever economic opportunity that's coming my way. No,
yeah.
that's a fair point. I think that's a fair point. So, with that being said, what we're going to go to next is the gentleman that we were talking about earlier. And this is once again
Oh, George Smith.
George Smith. Visit to Tonga. Apparently, the headline says visits his old high school, right?
Mm,
Toloa or Topo College, which was surprised to me. I didn't know that he had a direct relationship with Topo College. So let's just watch that real quick and see what Smitty was up to. Oh, let's turn on the sound.
I've got a lot of memories that of this place. Walking around the grounds just now, but then also in the past, and seeing old buildings, old places where I used to stay, and also the playing fields, and then also the church and Holton Chapel.
That's kind of cool.
mm. That is really cool.
So thank you once again for allowing us to be here on behalf of the Queensland Reds and also myself. We really appreciate your hospitality and also the lovely performance from the brass band. So thank you very much and well,
Malo.
Talk about one of the schools that produces probably the most rugby players than any other high school in
Oh
Tonga.
yeah.
Tolo is
Oh
a
yeah.
well-oiled machine over there, especially with rugby
Oh yeah,
sport.
you know, Atele Tolo are kind of the staples, right? And then you know all the other high schools every so often will come up
Yeah,
with a strong team,
yeah,
but Atele Tolo are definitely the staple producers of talent.
yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was kind of cool to see him kind of do that, and go to the
Mm,
school there. So with that
mm.
being said, that's just kind of our roundup, kind of catch up on some interesting
Current
news.
events. Yeah.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
interesting stuff that's going on there. Oh, actually, there's one more. There's one more. Let me see. There is one more that is kind of a little bit more politics. Where is it?
In Polynesia or
Yes,
U.S.
in Polynesia. Um, and it has to do with all the debt. China has been accused of checkbook diplomacy, right? Making friends. And I'm like, if if America and Europe have a problem with that, there's an easy solution. Show up with a checkbook, man.
Look.
Like, what do you
Yeah.
expect?
Yeah.
People will build relationships with other people that are helping them. That's the thing that kind of frustrates me about European and the West. It's they think that, like, oh, other developing countries should sacrifice the opportunity to progress and improve their standard of oh, I'm not sharing the right page, sorry. That people in developing countries are just going
Mm,
to sacrifice their quality of life and
yeah.
economic opportunity for some silly Western quote unquote first world problem of being woke and
Yeah.
blah blah blah, when Polynesians in the Pacific are just like, no man, I just want to create more opportunity for myself, economic stability. And who is coming around and helping with that? Fee is China,
China.
building
Yeah.
roads, right? There's talking about the roads. You talk about all the harbors and stuff that they're helping develop.
Mm,
And look at Tonga. Tonga's there, Samoa's there, Vanuatu. Then you have a bunch of African countries because China is investing a
yeah. A
ton.
lot.
Um,
What's that Lao? Is that somewhere in Africa? PDR?
I
What's
don't
that
know
first?
where Lao is specifically, but yeah, let me do this.
That's interesting. No, I was just gonna add on to what also for the Polynesian diaspora that's around. Most of them live in the Western countries that that kind of follow these news that why are the Pacific Islands do giving all these working with Chinese? And a lot of the Chinese they have the best they have the best interest rates too, and that's why they
Yeah,
kind of work with them. And another reason why a lot of the Pacific nations, I can just speak with Tonga. Usually, when they take those Chinese, there's no really there's apparently when they talk about attachments of when they give you the money, the Chinese just want they'll give you their money, they'll do the whole pay it back and stuff. But usually, sometimes the Western countries when they give you their money, um there's some social influence and attachments. They want you to do this, like, or things that are not culturally really adhered to in the Pacific nations. But from what I hear, a lot of these, all these discrimination kind of things and all of that kind of
the
has some
woke
attachment.
ideology.
Woke,
Yeah,
the woke ideology and all of these things that I I'm pretty sure is unnecessary, that has attachments to, along with their high interest interest rates to repay them back. And like what you said, hey, if you really care about the Pacific and helping them, open your checkbook and have a lower interest rate for
yeah.
the country so they can borrow.
No,
Yeah.
100%. There's the easy solution. So I do think I understand the concern from the West, but at the same time, see, like here, they're talking about Tonga's debt to rebuild after the burning and stuff. But like you said, an easy solution would have been provide
Mm.
a better loan,
Yes.
right? And so what do you expect countries in Polynesia to do? Just live in
Let the
poverty
people live
and not
in live in
yeah,
poverty. Yeah.
and so that's the kind of thing, like, yeah, and it is becoming a challenge, but at the same time, what else are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit kind of, I don't know, it's kind of annoying. Oh, and it's Laos. Looks like God loves you says it's Laos, and I checked it, it's Laos, so Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know where that is. Yeah.
So really, yeah, great. You guys have a concern, but you
Mm.
guys we gotta build infrastructure somehow,
Yeah.
right? And if the West is not willing to step up and China is, well, then I guess China is gonna be the financier.
Yeah.
So
No. No.
Malo Nelly, thank
Hey,
you.
what's up, Nelly?
So that was the last one. Just kind of interesting. It's just covering a bunch of different investments that China has had, all the relationships, right?
No,
And
too.
China
And I
is
have a
serious.
yeah. No, and I have a question too. In my opinion, the U.S. doesn't really. I mean, yes, today I'm just thinking the U.S. position because obviously the U.S. has money, right? But does the U.S. don't really care because I know China really cares the Pacific because they want presence. They want to be known, right? But America, with all its territories, we're talking about American Samoa, even Hawaii, Guam, Maldives, like do they really want to put more money into the Pacific when they already have a presence there? Maybe that's why the US
Maybe,
doesn't feel like,
maybe,
hey, they show, right, they show the empathy but they're not willing to really write the checkbooks, right? And China, hey, China doesn't really have any territories in the Pacific. They're like, we're gonna write the check checkbooks to have a presence in the Polynesian islands.
in
But
the
that's just me.
Pacific.
I'm just
Yeah. My gut feeling tells me this, and this is just a gut feeling. The contracts and stuff that go to Pacific are so small that
mm,
corrupt politicians. I'd rather spend billions of dollars in Europe and Africa because then I can funnel 1 or 2 million to myself. Because that's really
mm,
what it, in my opinion, right?
mm,
What's 50 million, but it really has to build something rather than I send it to Ukraine and they don't know how they spend it and that funnels
yeah,
back to me personally,
yeah,
right?
or
I
yeah,
mean, that
or
could
to a
be some of
party,
it.
or to some,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Some backdoor deal, and maybe the Tonga stuff is just peanuts. And then on top of that, like you
Peanuts.
said, we already have a presence there. What's
Mm,
the urgency? But it seems like there's been a little bit of a shift because, for example, like Tonga has like a presence from the U.S. embassy, not a full
yeah,
embassy, but some type of presence in Tonga,
yeah,
and so
yeah.
maybe
They're
the
starting
U.S.
to
is
care.
changing that.
Mm, mm.
All right. So the next one I wanted to look at, we're going to look at some of the comments that we've gotten recently, and it's primarily a specific comment that we've gotten.
What platforms do I?
We're going to look on YouTube.
Okay, okay.
Hmm. Let's show this for now. So this is a Grand M4371. He comments a lot, or she. They're Eastern Polynesian,
Hmm.
and I want to
Cool.
address a specific idea that seems to be a constant thing from Eastern Polynesians. Here's the comment. Let's see. Islands from Rarotonga, Tahiti, Hawaii, Fiji, Tonga, Vanuatu Islands. In oh no, that's not the one. I'm trying to find the one. Basically, the comment was regarding how Eastern Polynesia doesn't really care about who was the lead, and that right here, this is the comment.
Mm,
The only one still fighting on which island was on top is Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. You collide with each other to see which one's history is the truth. We Tahitians, Rarotongans, Hawaiians, Maoris don't even care who's better than who. We know our history, who ruled who, was allied. But when you got islands such as Tonga trying to drag us in and say they ruled us, is a whole different story, because my stories only talk about trading with
mm,
one another, intermarrying from island to island, and battling from time to time, and that's about it. Right?
mm. Yeah,
So there's a couple things I thought, because this is kind of the theme,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Eastern Polynesia was its own thing. right? It's just Tonga, Fiji, Samoa. And I want to address the first thing. No one is saying someone is better than someone else,
Mm,
right? We're all the
mm,
same people. That would be like, your next door neighbor saying they're better than you when you guys are cousins
yeah,
and come
yeah,
from the same family.
yeah.
So I want to address that first off. No one is trying to say someone is better than someone else. But what I will say is that kind of comment makes me think, and this is what came to my mind. How many people really think that there was an actual unified Polynesian nation?
Mm,
Right? Because what I'm getting from that kind of comment, and I see it every so often, is are there maybe there's a lot of people that don't believe that Polynesia was a united, unified nation, that we are just a bunch of distant cousins who one cousin just decided to go live on the next island and the next island. There was
mm,
no structure, there was no religious unity, there was no political, no social structure, right? Or kind of like a national cohesiveness.
mm,
um and that's kind of the feeling I'm getting, and maybe that's what the Eastern Polynesian people are feeling.
mm.
What are your thoughts? Have you heard or seen that? This is kind of a new thing I've never seen until these recent comments.
S- See, in my opinion, it's and this is what we're trying to to kind of rediscover or recover our history because Eastern Polynesia can be very difficult because you're talking about years of being colonized, right? When you're having Tonga that's never been colonized, then you have Samoa that actually one of the few that actually fought against colonization was independent, and they history is able to recover of how our ancient ways, because even Samoans have stories of, recognizing the Tui Tonga, and to me, in our oral history, we have lots of history relating to women and to Eastern Polynesia coming to Tonga and paying tribute. So, and it could be a thing that story hasn't passed on when you're talking about they're still under, we're talking about like Cook Islands still under
Mhm.
the British Empire, which is under New Zealand under King Charles. Then you're talking about French Polynesia, been under France since the beginning. I just went to Tahiti not too long ago with my wife, and the thing it's I'm just being honest. When I go there, I never heard any Tahitian. It was straight French, right? So we're talking about generations of generations, and it's hard to break that mold. Like and it's when you have so many generations that's been told the same story, it's gonna take a lot to really uncover the true understanding of how us as Polynesians were one nation. So in
Mm.
the new then you add into Hawaii since the takeover since Queen Liliuokalani, right? Then you add the Maoris with New Zealand that's still under the British Empire because the King of Charles is still recognized as the head state of New Zealand. So see, and that's what I'm saying. And that's what we are just a voice to say that we were one empire in the days of old and reminiscing about that. And then the peoples today just giving a perspective that we were one people because we have stories of marrying high status women from those islands in Tahiti to Itonga, and not only that, their families would come and pay tribute to the Inasi and also the Polo Polo, and that is and that remains true because we have villages that have very strong ties to Eastern Polynesia names, and a lot of them have we've kind of mentioned the
New
New Toa,
Toa.
which was it Mene Hauri, which is a kind of like another good name in Tonga, and that's the reason why Queen Salote kind of changed it. She was already understanding that this is probably not a good name, but that changed the name, and that kind of if some Tongans don't know that, if they really discover that history of that's our tie to Tahiti, and even Tahitians have a hard time understanding that's our connection to them, and also with the names within what French Polynesia with Bora Bora with Vavau, that's a connection to the Vavau group islands of people. So to me, that's where the issue is. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I've tried. I mean, because I agree, I'm definitely a believer that we were one nation right? With unified government, leadership, religion, and social structure, with individual like adaptations, right? Within those different areas. Um, we watched the video on our last live or two lives ago about Tapu Tapu Atea,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Where
yeah,
they
yeah,
said, oh, this is where the Chiefs went because of Tangaloa was here. And to me, when you have that type of oral history that seems to be pretty embedded,
yeah,
the question I ask myself is there other evidence that could explain that? And the thing that comes to mind is those are pretty far distant away from Tonga, and we have strong oral history that as the Polynesian nation grew, it became very difficult to come twice a year. And what
yeah.
ended up happening was regional leadership would accept tribute in specific areas, and they didn't
Mm,
have to go all the way to Tonga all the time, right? And
mm,
so I look at that and said, hey, that could possibly explain um, why places like Tapu Tapu Atea, everybody remembers that. Oh, we would go here, and it was only some of the rare um, ruling families that understood we are accepting this on behalf of the Tuitonga, and maybe
correct.
only they went right
Yes.
with the trip or something. But I don't know. I kind of got an
I
interesting vibe on some of the feedback from
yeah.
our cousins in Eastern Polynesia that
Yes.
they're kind of feeling like, everybody likes the idea of, oh yeah, we're one people. But then the moment you start to provide a structure
Yeah.
of how we existed as a people, um, people all of a sudden get a little like funky. I don't know. It was
Yeah.
kind of weird.
No,
Um,
no. And I was gonna no, and I was just gonna
he looks like Alexander just wanted to repeat like our ties to Tahiti and Tonga. I mean, I think he just wants just to kind of revisit, like you said, the marriages, some of the village names. Masi, just kind of
yeah.
repeat that for Alex.
Yeah. So our connection to Eastern Polynesia, I think is it Ha'ameneuri Tua,
Yes.
which is
Yeah.
referred to New Toa. That's it's usually it's a frowned upon word because well, I guess in Tonga meaning, but that's our connection to Tahiti because apparently there's a place like that in Tahiti too, and maybe that could have been a spot because that's kind of located in the eastern side of Tongatapu, which a lot of the polo polo or the inasi would happen, and maybe it could be a staying place for the people coming from Eastern Polynesia, maybe not just Tahiti, coming and staying there. And that name changed. I don't know when during time of Queen Salote, which is known as New Doa, and just a lot of references to Bora Bora. To its original name was Vavau. That's connections to Vavau Group Islands, and not only that, there's a village in Samoa called Vavau. So like these are connections that we are one people. And my question was that now that I'm remembering it, for the Eastern Polynesian cousins, if you're considered a Polynesian race, right, then you gotta go to the data point, which settlement is the oldest. Right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
far, we've only done Nukureka, and that's where. And then if you start from there, then you can start putting in the puzzles because we know Tapu Tapu Atea was like a launching point, and I have my own ideas of why that's a strong story because to me that was a strong story of most of the people were picked up there to come and settle in New Zealand and more like in Hawaii and other places. But and that's why that's a strong story that's kind of kept and it
Stuck through
survived,
the ages.
stuck
Yeah.
through because it's a big thing. It was a big event, right? Of taking you're probably moving a lot of families, a lot of people that people still remember, and that story has kind of persisted through colonization, and that's why that story still exists. And they think they're the right, they're the origin of Tangaloa. But I'm just saying, if you're considered a Polynesian in the Eastern Islands, just go to now you have the oral story. Then you're gonna go to the data point of carbon dating which
Yeah.
is the oldest settlement. Start from there, then it will lead you to Tonga, and then when you start hearing some Tongan history of having the Inasi and Polo Polo and our connections to the Eastern Islands, then we can go from there. So, but to me, that's what I'm saying. We're all one people. Tonga was recognized as the headquarter of that Polynesian empire, but we were all the same people. There's no way that Eastern Polynesia functioned on its own little section when we know Tonga was traveling through boats, and other the West Polynesia was like it's almost like a freeway, it's traveling everywhere. They were not just going over or doing whatever. It was all one people traveling, you know, back and forth. But that's just my spill on that. Hopefully that Alex kind of explains our connection to the Eastern Polynesia. So
Yeah, Alex has a question here. Do you think the Maori would have come together, kapau na ea'u a Tonga Navy to Aotearoa? I mean, what are your thoughts? I think his question is saying, hey, if Tonga had maintained that relationship with Aotearoa, do you think it would have, would
yeah.
have been helpful? What are your thoughts on that, Masi?
So this is my thing here, Alex. Because of the Tongan civil wars, we're talking about 200 years of civil wars in Tonga, and then the fracturing of the Tuitonga Empire. Tonga was really shrunk its presence to pretty much, I think, to Uvea Islands, um, Fiji, and Samoa, and it was within that civil war. So you know, to me, if let's just say at the height of the Tuitonga was able to last long up to the time when the islands were being discovered by Europeans, I'm pretty sure Tonga would have been able to protect a lot of our Polynesians' island sovereignty, in my opinion, of the unity. But
Hmm.
it just happened in a time Balangis were coming over when Tonga was really its influence and fracturing was happening within the Tuitonga. That its influence was really just to Fiji, the Tuna, I mean the what Uvea and Samoa. That when it really kind of fractured, and then obviously those islands were eventually France taking over Uvea and then all those other islands, and then Tonga was like, okay, we can't really do it. We can only do some ties and stuff here and there, and then we really just focus on Tonga, which
Yeah.
is we're able to survive. So
And that was barely, right? That was a lot of work, a lot of
yes,
luck, and most importantly, a lot of help from God to
yeah,
make that happen. Because even with everything that Tupo the First did, if it wasn't mercy and grace of God, it wouldn't have happened. You
yeah.
know.
No, and that's another thing, Alex. Like I said, with the whole traveling back and forth, I'm pretty sure that because the Tongans were, I don't know about you, though, were the Tongans the ones that probably were able to like apparently during those early like 1700s. I think the Tongans were the ones that were killing most of the Europeans whenever they kind of came to Tonga, while the other islands was more they were more accepting and kind of mixing with the Europeans instead when they started settlements. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
Yes, they're actually, it's kind of crazy because what they found is a handful of European ships
just
that had
sunk.
the same fate like William Mariner's ship,
Mm,
right? So
mm,
apparently seemed to be a successful formula. They almost did it to Captain Cook, almost the
yes,
same thing to Captain Cook, but they just couldn't agree on either when to have the attack or how to divide the spoils, right? But they
yes,
found multiple ships
ships.
in different
Yeah,
areas in Tonga where it looks like the
it
Tongans
was a
did the same
normal
thing. Yeah,
normal practice
it
to
was,
like
hey,
raid
let's
a ship
feed
and
them.
kill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's feed them, get them off the ship. We kill them and then take all the metal, take all
yeah,
the stuff that we want, and then burn the evidence and
yeah.
sink the ship.
Yeah, and eventually Cook got killed in Hawaii. But I'm just saying, with that information, and let's just saying the whole traveling back and forth was a common thing. If that still continued to happen, I wouldn't. I can't see a Tongan not talking to a Maori and say, "Hey, be careful with these guys." Especially when you sign your treaty, "Hey, be careful," or you know what, just get rid of them, or just be careful with. bringing too many of the Europeans, and then you find out they're overpopulated. Like those kind of messaging, I'm pretty sure the Tongans would have been able to share with the Maoris to just to be more careful, right? And that's kind of difficult when you're trying to fight for your own survival in those islands. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, Malo Masi looks like Alex appreciated and said,
mm,
Whakaofa, when I see our own people curse God for changing our culture by bringing Christianity to Tonga, claiming that things like we said before, it's if you only dig on the surface level, you come to that conclusion, Alex. But when you dig deeper, we take the position that when you dig deeper, Hikuleo is the Christian God, and really, in
mm,
many ways, we're being restored to the same
mm,
God that brought us out there.
mm,
And so it's I know some people think that we're being sacrilegious or something. I don't know, but that's something that we believe, and there's some reasons for it why
yeah,
we believe that perspective. Hey, God loves you. I reckon Tongans came here before Maori, but like I said, can't grow
mm,
ufi hopa and too cold. Yeah, and the other thing too, agree 100%. God loves you, and too big of a land. One of the things that, in my opinion, because when there are certain advantages to being small and isolated, right? And I think Tonga, the Tui Tonga, liked being in an isolated place. It kind of elevates, just like any person of high status. What do? They
you
put
don't know too.
themselves in an
Yeah,
isolated area, right? Because of their status, quote unquote, access is limited.
no, I want to mention what God loves you with is I have some thoughts on that because there's uh there's a story of Toy going around who was a navigator, very skilled navigator, came to New Zealand, caught a moa from New Zealand, took it to the Tuitonga, and there's a road called is it Halafonua Moa that leads up to an island where where you bury where the langi's at to that island,
Hmm.
on the maps, and apparently that was named after what Toy did, and apparently Toy also stopped over to the Cook Islands and a lot of the places in Tahiti, in French Polynesia, and Marquesas, and you brought a lot of those people to come and settle to
Mm,
New Zealand. And that's why the majority of those people have strong ties to Eastern Polynesia. But Toy was a well-known
navigator.
navigator for the Tuitonga. Yes.
Mm, yeah,
So yeah,
and
that's
see,
just
and that's
my
the thing.
that's the oral history that I've
History.
seen. Yeah, that I've heard
Yeah,
just regarding about that.
yeah, and I mean, and to be honest, the largest ships that are expressed, right, are the Tongan ships, right? Like we looked at some of the sketches
Mm,
of these Tongan ships. Was it the Lomi Peao that was the most
mm,
the largest? I mean, this thing made
it's huge.
human beings look tiny in some of the
Yeah,
sketches, right? So carrying hundreds of people and
yeah.
going long distances, and so this is kind of like very interesting to see that it could have been, the Tuitonga themselves giving direction where to move people. Interesting.
Mm.
Looks like Nacho, give him a full cup. Malo,
Hello,
Nacho.
Nacho. Malo.
Looks like Water Bears, our official
Hey,
PR. Malo,
what's
Water
up? What's
Bears.
up?
Malo, Apito, welcome. Maoris have a Hawaii and believe in many islands of the Tuamotu. There are Vaihi or Hawaii type names
Mm,
all throughout Polynesia, right? All
yeah.
over the place. It is that's one of the reasons why um when the Samoans say that those are all references to Savaii, our position
Mm,
is Tongan oral history says that Vaihi is the faraway land and that's our motherland. And
mm,
therefore, it cannot be Savaii because that's down the road.
yeah.
That's not the far, far, far away land. And that's why we take the position that Vaihi is the Americas and that is the faraway land, and that Easter Island was the last stop you made before you went back to Vaihi.
Mm,
Um, Kanaka Maori and Maori sound very similar, 100%. A lot
Mm,
of
mm,
relationship there. And look at opposite sides of Polynesia, right? With the
mm.
Maori in the southern, most
Yeah,
southern point, and then on eastern Polynesia for the Kanaka Maori, very similar. Good point there, Water Bears.
yeah,
Nacho, I heard it. Yeah, the Lomipia was massive,
yeah,
massive, and when we say it carries over 200, that probably does not include supplies,
yeah.
right, and other things that need to be carried in order to make long distance travel. Hey, Surfer T, welcome, welcome,
Hello, Surfer
Malo,
T.
Malo. Another comment here: Tuamotu Islands is the place from where many Maori Waka came from. Yeah,
Mm,
and that's the thing. It's kind of interesting. Like I said, I kind of got the vibes that our Eastern Polynesian cousins there are thinking that
yeah.
we weren't a unified Polynesian nation, from kind of their explanations, but maybe because of their being far east and not being involved and being as close to the center, that may
Mm,
be another reason behind it as well. Hey, Masi, what are your thoughts on the Micronesians and how they fit into all of this? Do you feel,
mm. Well, isn't
any
there?
thoughts?
Yeah. No, good question, Matafa. My understanding, Polynesians settled every island. We were the first people to step in the islands. We're talking about Eastern Polynesia, all the way up to Hawaii, right? Coming down to Uvea, Samoa, New Zealand, Tonga. Fiji was the only one that already had people, and I'm thinking that's the Micronesians. That's my
Mm,
understanding, right? And then the Fiji just became more Polynesian because of the mixing and traveling back and forth between Polynesians and those people in those
mhm.
islands. Um, that's just me. Also, Vanuatu also is another one. See, I don't know if Vanuatu is the same history like Fiji, if there were people there, Tua, before Polynesians got there, or did if they were like Fiji, they were just only kind of influenced when they mixed, because there's some history ties to Vanuatu. So that's just my idea of Micronesians, where we kind of have some um, mingle with them in Polynesian oral history, but yeah, that's
Yeah,
just my understanding.
and there seems to be a decent connection between the Tuimanua and Micronesians.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
is I guess a Tuimanua. What I saw a video, and actually maybe let's watch it since Mataafa brought up Micronesia.
Mm.
Let me see if I can find the video if I saved it. Um,
What, in Kiribati or Marshall Islands? Where was this?
it is right here. I don't know where exactly.
Mm. Solomon Islands. Oh,
Johnny. I'm from
Micronesia.
Nagporo in the Federated States of Micronesia.
It says in the Federated States of
Mic-
Micronesia.
oh.
So let me bring that up, and it kind of just lines up with your question, Matafa. We'll bring it up and
Mm.
take a look at it. Maybe we'll do this so that we can see it in. And he kind of gives a story of a connection to Samoa,
Mm.
in his account here of the Tuimanua.
My name is Johnny. I'm from Nagporo in the Federated States of Micronesia. And today I'm going to share the history, part of the history of Nagporo. There was two brothers, two sons of a king from Samoa. In that place they call Manua in Samoa. After the king died, the eldest son should be the king, but the younger one wanted to be the king. So what happened? They fought. And when they fought, the younger one lost the fight. Then he has to leave with his wife, his wife's father, and relatives and friends. So they prepared themselves on a canoe called Haurua in Hawaii. The canoe in Hawaii, they name it Haurua. And that's the kind of canoe that they sail from Samoa through all the Pacific most of the Pacific Island, and finally settled in Nakuru.
Since the game of rugby began,
So that's kind of an
Interesting. Mm.
interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
What wasn't very clear to me, it didn't seem like he was saying that the Tuimanua's son that was losing the battle discovered the island. It was more like they were just trying to get out of Polynesia, away, and making sure that they weren't in anywhere that had the possibility of the Tuimanua finding them.
Yeah.
So that's the way I kind of saw that, because a lot of people mention, the Tuimanua is recognized in
Mm.
Micronesia. I mean, we don't doubt that some of our ancient ancestors were
Yeah.
traveling long distance. What we're just kind of referring to is who was the founding fathers, who were the ones that established a unified governance, who are those that provided a religious belief and the basis of building an empire.
Mm.
So that's kind of the response to that. And here's some of the questions, some comments. Micronesians may be the first ones from Taiwan. That could be right. They seem to have a lot of the Asian
Mm.
influence. They're
Yeah.
smaller, have a,
Yeah.
a, a little bit of an
Their body
Asian
structure.
influence.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only thing
Uh,
is they're just paku, dark over there.
hey, Nacho, yes, the traditional chaser for the Kavas, the Mountain Dew.
Oh, Mountain Dew.
And
We
it's funny. Oh, go
no, I
ahead,
was
man.
gonna say. No, I was gonna say some of the even Uncle Norman would say this, but a lot of the construction guys that work Maka, the Tongan guys who call Mountain Dew their new mata, their
New
green
Mata.
coconut.
And it's
Pass me the
funny.
new mata.
It's funny that you bring up that story, because Yate is the primary reason that I started drinking a lot of Mountain Dew, and it was with Uncle Norman and his crews,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And they would always, you go get the soda for the crew. And I remember getting scolded once. I would be like, "Hey, what sodas do you guys want?" And they all look at me and be like, "Yana, there's only one that matters. I don't mind new mata. Go bring coconut out, and
Bring
there's
the
the
mount.
Mountain Dew."
That's the Mountain Dew. That is the favorite drink for our Tongans and Polynesians, man.
Hey, Clyde Moore, Malo Lere,
Yo,
welcome
hello,
back.
Clyde.
I found a video that ties what your father says about Maui on YouTube. The video is called Voyage of Rata and Maui. This video was confirmed with a university study in regards to Pacific cave drawings as well. Interesting.
Hmm.
We're gonna have
Very
to look
interesting.
that up, and see that. Maybe I can look that up out here in the background. Um, any thoughts on that, Masi?
Doesn't PNG hold the most ancient in what civilization? Or
I think he's kind of speaking about the Pacific. This may be related to your comment about Tonga having the oldest uh, findings, but we're talking about Polynesia,
correct?
not
We're
not
talking
the
about
Pacific
Polynesian.
in general.
Yes, not in the Pacific, Matafa. Sorry about that. Within the Polynesian race, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
But for those regarding the Ha'amene Uri that's referred to New Togan Tongatapu, there's a village in a region called Ha'amene, which is in Taha'a in the Tahiti Islands. So just for reference with our connections and stuff, along with Bora Bora used to be Vavau that has ties to Vavau and Vavau in Bolo.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up a little bit more, Clyde Moore. But I got an interesting one: the Maori myth that the Bible's Hebrew Moses was Maui. Getting all kinds of interesting stuff going on.
Maria,
Um,
Maria.
mm. Visay village is the first landing of the Africans in Fiji, where I stayed. Very beautiful historical place.
Mm,
There are some beautiful places in Fiji, 100%. And interesting, it seems like, yeah, and then the Fijians seem to have a pretty strong oral history that they come from Africa and even like Egypt. I've heard a couple of the Fijians say,
yeah.
Northern Africa. So some interesting. Man, I didn't know so much people had one conversations with our Tongan royal family to make some claims on TikTok. Yeah, apparently, There's some people who have like, I don't know if it's like a weekly call with the royal family where everything is unfolded, but interesting. What you guys, Unfathomable Malo, what you guys think about the North Island Maoris and South Island Maoris having different dialects? The North pronounce NG like Rangi, and the South substitute it for K like Raki. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Masi? I don't really have a strong position one way or another. Any thoughts?
I don't know too much about that, Unfathomable. I don't know too much about that, but I do know when I do hear Maori, I do hear when they pronounce the the T's like Tongans most of the time, and then sometimes they call it like, let's just say like someone will say Tangata, someone will say Tangata like a Tongan, and
Mm,
when to use it, they kind of interchange here and there, and it's just, yeah, I'm not see, but with the whole north and south, I'm not too well versed about that regarding the Maori language. But I just know there is some differences from what I heard. But my experience, there's just with the pronunciation is like Tongans, and then sometimes with the T's, the nga is the same from what I've heard, but with they'll call it like tangata or tangata, like how a Tongan would say it. But they
okay.
in the same sentence they'll use the T like a
And the
ta
K's.
and then ta sometimes. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Here's another one. Thank you for clarifying. Is it your opinion that Polynesian Empire was originally Tongan and all other Polynesian cultures are doing? And that's the thing, Mataafa. I mean, it there's no other way to say it besides that, but it's not really Tongan and all other Polynesian cultures. It's all Polynesian, right? It's just unfortunate that we have to speak in Tongan, Samoan, Tahitian, Hawaiian because through colonization, the Polynesian nation was divvied up, right? And then nations formed out of that. That's why sometimes we tell people, in a sense, Tonga as an individual nation, Samoa as an individual nation, in many ways didn't really exist. Tonga is just the Polynesian nation shrunk to just those group of islands, and that Samoa was broken off. But so that's just to be kind of technical,
Yeah.
because yeah, I know people kind of feel like we're being disrespectful of, oh, we're just putting up Tonga and blah blah blah. Well, I can understand why you take that position, but that's not our intent, because reality is, if you could just imagine all of Polynesia as one country, and
Mm,
little by little we got colonized, right? When I say we, when Hawaii was colonized and Samoa and all those other pieces, that's us, right? And Tonga just happened to be the capital. It had a lot of the best ideas, the most political experience, structure, stability for the longest amount of time that it was able to survive.
mm,
But anyways, I'm getting distracted. I apologize, Matafa. To answer your question, and Masi can kind of give some areas I may be missing. But in short term, our position is the founding fathers of the Polynesian Empire or nation are Tangaloa, Maui, and the Taula, which is basically the priests, and that they first landed in Tonga. And it is their injection of the astronomical knowledge, the social structure, the political structure, and the navigational knowledge that the Polynesian nation of finding islands and settling and spreading it started from. That is
mm,
that is our position. That's our kind of the things that we kind of base our thoughts on. We're going to go through two studies tonight. One will be a study on the Manua
mm,
video that goes through a study on Manua, where the Tui Manua lived, and they go over and talk about the residents of the Tui Manua. And then we're also going to look at another study that looks at one of the residences of the Tuitonga and have a discussion and just kind of explore what the data points are saying. Anything I may have missed there, Masi, or anything to add to
no, no.
Matafa's
I'll
comment?
just add to your explanation. I think the best way to think about this matafa is like a tree, right? Tonga is the root, and then you grow, and then you get like, you can throw in Samoa as being like the trunk, right? and then you kind of grow with the branches, and then you get the Tahiti, then you get Uvea, then you get New Zealand, Hawaii, Marquesas, Rapa Nui. They're all part of the same family. Then when you get colonized, right? Then you get things get chopped up, the branches get chopped up, the stump is chopped, and then whatever's left, which is Tonga, which is the root of the empire. And that's just an illustration of just how the empire is. And like when we do mention that Tonga was able to survive colonization, is because we were, just because of the knowledge they were able to hold to govern, because a lot of the Polynesian islands were taken over just because there was no structure of government. And Tonga being able to survive, that's a win for all of Polynesia, because we're one nation kind of thing. And that's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
It's just we're all part of a different kind of groups of islands, but we're all come from the root. That's what we're
Yeah,
trying to.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we all share Tangaloa, right?
Yes.
We all share Maui. We all share a unified name for the most part on Kava. You go to Melanesia, different parts of Melanesia call Kava different things. Same thing in Micronesia. And so
Mm,
there's a cohesiveness and a uniform um, social, astronomical, religious aspect that the Polynesians share as a group,
yeah.
that really kind of separates us from Melanesian and Micronesians, because they seem to be much more fractured. But Polynesians in general, we exude a national, in a sense, a national identity that's shared, that's been parsed and broken up due to colonization. But like Masi said, um, hopefully that kind of gives you some context to that,
Mm,
Matafa. The Heiau in Hawaii have similar structure to Tongan Fort in Uvea and parallel to the Pulemele. That is some of the things that I was thinking as well. And we're trying to find more videos and data on that, Alexander, because when you look at the Pulemele, you look at some of these marais, and you look
mm,
at the forts that the Tongans had, that is 100% we know the Tongans built. They're not too different from what you see in Eastern Polynesia,
yeah.
right? And so there may be some crossover there. We haven't found good enough videos and content on that, but
Mm,
when we do find it, trust me, that'll be something we bring to the table. Any
yeah.
thoughts on that, Mussy?
No, no. I'm just thinking that that seems to be a common practice of building the structure, gathering a bunch of rocks, and even the marais they have in Tahiti, the Purimede in Samoa. A lot of labor going to gathering these volcanic kind of rocks. I don't know the scientific name, but gathering these dark volcanic rocks and just piling them over, making it a huge structure, and trying to understand exactly what it happened. It could be some religious things, or it could have been a or just a memorial of a huge event, something. But yeah, we don't know exactly what it was built for.
Not 100%. Only because I'm lazy to read the online articles. So Tevita Fale got the Vaihi theory from when he was younger from the OGs, right? Yes, 100%. And we will just kind of flesh that out
Mm,
a little bit more, Water Bears. This is
mm,
not your ordinary OGs. The longest and largest settlement of the Tuitonga was in La Paja, right? And so this is where you find the most uh, dense allocation of chiefly titles within
mm,
a area, which just kind of shows that there's a complexity and a density of power, right? When there's so much power in an area that you have multiple chiefly titles within a small area, that's an evidence of concentration of power.
mm,
Um, but yes, these are people who descend not only from the Tuitonga, but from the various titles within, who were managing, and their ancestors were the administrative arm of the Polynesian nation. And
mm,
so, there's a little bit, we like to say, there's a lot more credibility in the OGs in that vicinity
mm,
than you would say typical OGs in other areas, because they would only be managing, let's say, an outer island. They would only be managing the politics and the responsibilities in that outer island in respect to
Mm,
back to the mother island, right? But these OGs in La Paja are the ones who their ancestors were managing a larger empire, a larger nation over thousands of miles. When the Inasi came, when the Polo Polo came, these are the people who were managing things and
mm,
who had access to the ancient history, including Vaihi, where Tevita Fale received the first kind of tutoring and
yeah.
an understanding of that theory. Any thoughts on that, Mas?
No, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, I think Dad said when he started serving kava to the OGs in Mua and La Paja area, that's when he heard the word of the elders from this area in Mua saying that we came from Vahi, and the thing they would say is Vahiye, Vahiye, kind of very far, Vahi, very far. So yeah.
This one might be a better question for you to tackle first, Masi. Now, Fanong Hetalanoa, that another connection between Manu and Tonga is they are the only island in Haamoa to pronounce their T's like us. Any knowledge or confirmation on that, Masi, from your experience?
I haven't heard unfathomable. I haven't heard like I spent I haven't been to Manua, but I did spend quite a bit of time in Tutuila, which is the closest island to the Manua Islands. Um, you know, there is a different dialect of how Manuans would speak Samoan, but it wasn't like a Tongan to my understanding of how they did their pronunciation. Because you're talking about many years of being under U.S. and being being colonized, and the language started to really change. But obviously, from the records we see, people from Hawaii and other islands would communicate perfectly with Ukalala and some of the other Tongans that were in Tonga. So I don't know. I haven't heard in my experience, but like I said, I think I only came across one person that was literally from Manua that was living in Tutuila. We didn't talk about too much of if they were different. I just knew it was a different dialect compared to the main language of Samoan being spoken today. But that's just my thoughts.
This is hilarious. Maria, Surfer T. I don't know if you're being joking or serious, but he mentioned earlier that there's a National Geographic article he read, and they interviewed Tupo the Fourth, and he said Tupo the Fourth mentions that there are certain sailing techniques that only he and the devil knows. Oh yeah, that is hilarious. And yeah, Alex, we've seen that video of the gentleman. I forgot his name. He visits Tonga. He visits Uvea,
Mm,
and then he also goes to Easter Island. And he says, "Man, I
yeah,
can't help but see the observation." And he invites people. Maybe there should be a study
yeah,
done to think any kind of correlation, right?
yeah,
Um, Masi, how you very familiar with the Samoan culture? It looks like Wara Bears is correct, but Masi, can you give some more context to
yeah.
Mataafa's question?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty familiar with Samoan culture. Like I lived in Savai'i. I covered a lot of Savai'i. I covered a lot of Upolu, and I also lived in Tutuila. The only islands I never reached was Manua during my during my time spent in Samoa. So that's kind of that's kind of like my background.
And also, Masi's great grandfather was full Samoan,
Yes,
so it's
and
also in the DNA, and then
also in the
also
blood,
and
also in the
also
blood.
through his dad, right? The Tuitongas were marrying Samoans all the time,
Yeah.
and so also on the dad side, so a lot of
No.
Samoan DNA. When Masi was
Yes.
in Tonga eating the Samoan food, his DNA was like coming to full life.
Yeah. No, no, no. It was funny. And then when I eat with some of the elders just throughout the villages, when we like having outside the jokes of the only way a Tongan can be brought down, they refer to the story of the Tunan Fata, kicking the Tongan out. And that's always fun and jokes and stuff. And then, but when you like get serious talks, a lot of the Samoan elders would always refer as Tonga being, an influential place in Samoan affairs. And then when I started learning about the Salama Sina, then the Tafaifa titles and how that all came to be, it's very strong influence with the correlation with the Tuitonga. So, and then I've learned little things here and there about places in Sainga. There's a place Sainga, but it's in kind of close to Apia. People always think it's a Chinese place, but it's from what I've heard with some people, it's called Sai Na, referring because and that place doesn't have a Fa'alupenga like most Samoans have a Fa'alupenga when they go and especially do greetings for ceremonial stuff.
What's a
This
fa'alupenga, Masi? Just for those who
it's
aren't familiar.
Fa'alupenga is set of words of acknowledging chiefs in that area,
Oh, so to say
right?
it's kind of protocol before you
Protocol
enter. Okay.
before when you do ceremony, when you're acknowledging when your speeches, these areas. Sai na is one of the places that didn't have a fa'alupenga, and the Samoans say they don't have a fa'alupenga because because that was the Tuitonga that would reside there, and we have our oral history saying there was 5 generations of Tuitonga staying in Savai'i and Upolu. So just like little nuggets that I've learned here and there in my time, spending in my time in Samoa and stuff. So yeah, just little stuff here and there.
Yeah, interesting. It's Clive Moore said that Masis are in-house undercover Uso. And Uso by language and experience, but also by genes. And I guess with me too, I know
Mm.
I shared on the last was it the last live where I pulled up
Yeah,
my 23andMe,
Tu-
showed where a lot of the DNA
Tumasanga,
material.
right? Or
Yeah.
didn't it say Tuma? And that's the Tumasanga is the kind of the region of when the Maria Toa, that's its influence, which is considered like one of the pretty much the top, right? There's four, but there's Maria Toa is usually considered the most important one. Then the Chupua, then the whole Mataafa and Tuibari Ifano, which is considered the four ones. But I'm not surprised because that's the strong connection to the Tuitonga also living there and also the Maria Toa, and that's our strong connection there
So to
to
there.
the
Yeah.
Tumasanga district villages.
Yeah, and my grandma's sister, she married and lived in Samoa. Anne, remember Anne?
Yes.
She lived there, and we have cousins in Samoa that are Samoan Tongan. I
Yep.
mean, once again, man, it it's it's not a big deal, but I guess it is that we have to use Tonga Samoan stuff because in reality, we are all, I have
What?
Melanesian blood that comes from Fiji, right? Because of the Tuitonga's sister,
Mm,
he doesn't want another Tongan having too high of a social structure within his family or in Tonga. So what do? They tell the sister, you have to go marry someone.
yeah.
And typically it was a Fijian that they
Mm,
would tell them to marry
yeah.
because that helps maintain the status of the Tuitonga. So it's kind of an interesting little situation that you have going on there. Um, hey, Clyde Moore, we that's a secret ingredient that we're not gonna share, but quick question from Mataafa. Question as in Afekasi intermarriages between Samoan husband and Tongan wife creates non-Tongan children. Is every generation of that considered non-Tongan? I don't know that. I don't think that's the case, Mataafa. I think if I understand correctly, as long as you can show um, descending from a Tongan, I think your kids can go to Tonga and get a passport. You just have to show either how your wife's father, right? Your wife's father in Tonga, then that's how you draw it back. So I don't think that that's the case, Mataafa. I think that's once you're a Tongan, you're always a Tongan, and for getting citizenship, you just have to show your wife's father, and if not, then your wife's mother's father. You just have to show that, and once you show that documentation, they issue you a Tongan birth certificate. That's how I got my Tongan citizenship. Masi, same thing. We just had to show our father, and if we'll clarify that. But my understanding is you can still do that through the maternal line as well. Do you know, Masi, any kind of clarification
No,
on
no.
that?
I think I know. I know if you don't have a Tongan father, like you said, it's a lot more work and it's a little
Mhm.
bit more strict because I know a lot of the. So when a national, like a non-Tongan by blood, they can get passports, but they can't get land. And I think if you have a Samoan father that doesn't, Samoan, we talking in terms of now. Let's just say they live in Upolu and they have a Tongan mother, and they want to get a citizenship, but they won't really have entitlements to land because that's usually an inheritance of the oldest son of a Tongan father, which inherits that. But legal stuff, so that's my understanding, Dua. But regarding the whole getting citizenship of that is, yeah, that's doable. But regarding land, it's usually the only way that Tongan wife would only have it if, let's just say, the
Is through the
grandfather didn't have.
husband. Yeah.
Yes, usually through the husband. So
The husband passed away, then the wife would hold it until she passed away.
correct, correct.
Yeah. So just a follow-up question. Historically and culturally, you've said that Tuitonga would marry Samoans, but the kids were still Tongan in there. Well, we'll clarify that a little bit. What we mean is the inheritance of father to son, it's patriarchal. And the patriarchal descendant and inheritance. So it's not necessarily that it's, you know, they're those are the only ones that are Tongan. The concept of Tongan and Samoan was very loose back then because it was all one quote unquote
Yeah.
nation. What we're mostly referring to that in Mataafa, it is the line of inheritance was father to son.
Hmm.
And it wasn't like father to daughter, and then you jump back and forth. You can tie the tuitonga from father to son, father to son, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So it's not really of saying, oh, because because it's the mom that it means that you're not Tongan. Actually, the traditional Tongan kind of thinking is your rank many
Hmm.
ways is determined by your mother, right? But the inheritance is through the father and political governance. So what would really happen is in Tongan theory is you get your quote unquote blood from your mother, but the inheritance and the political structure is through your father, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. So it's kind of different. The genetics and the political and government structure are kind of separate, is the way I understand it. Masi, any thoughts on that?
No, no, no. That's pretty correct. Because you know, more back in those days, usually, like we said, the inheritance are always with the father. The mother provides usually the her family side and influence, and also blood too when they bring. But like usually your inheritance are always through father to son, and then of course colonization happened. Tonga has to create laws, and today it's those that inheritance comes from your father. That includes land, your
Mhm.
plot of land and areas that your family has had for generations, and that's why it's come through that. Samoa's way of doing things, just like the Tuikanpolu used to do of old,
The
is
voting, yeah.
elections. Yes, elections, and not it's not really a whole clear cut like father to son. It can be, that's why they have like female matais, or females can have positions of high ranking here and there, but usually it's a patriarchal thing in the Tongan or Tongatapu kind of way of doing it.
Not
So
100%. We're trying to chip away. This is great questions. I really appreciate the questions and interactions here from everyone. Um, let's see. I heard the reason for rocks all over the place, like the Tarietumu fort, was to slow down the enemies if they were to rush the fort because they were laivae, running on sharp. It could be. Some people are saying that they could have been defensive structures.
hmm,
That may have been the case, especially when you have guys like it looks like Kaulufo Nuofekai after the assassination of his father. It seemed like Homeboy took a little bit more of a
yeah,
military force
yeah,
approach, where it seems like before that it wasn't so militaristic. It was
yeah,
more through,
Genes.
leveraging the
Yeah,
religious power and the familial relationships
yeah,
to govern. But kind of Kaulufonua Fekai said, yeah, we're taking a different route this time.
yeah. No, no, and I'll just add into that. It seems like from what we've kind of discussed to a Kaufonua Fekai, with him and his five generations, and even the next Tuitonga title holder after him was what Ha'avuhufaka or something. You're talking about like this. It seems like that five generation was very material, like not material, militaristic, uh,
Militaristic, yeah.
militaristic. That's what it seems like because it seems like
Yeah,
the
it was
fort was building
Ha'afuhuvaka.
Ha'afu'uvaka. Yeah,
Yeah, so
you're
yeah,
talking about that five generation. That's and it seems like that's when the forts were starting to really build up. The Purimere. Now Purimere, maybe Purimere was like a fort or something. Then you get the Uvea fort popping up, and then you're probably getting other forts around Polynesia start going up. And I feel like during that five generation of Tuitonga, it was just full on military engagement, and it was just like show of force probably. And then, but because of the assassination, that's probably what drives it. But yeah.
TN4. Um, is Clyde Moore. I have a whole wing of my family in American Samoa. And that's the thing, dude. I watched this video of this Samoan girl and she was in shock because she did her DNA, right? And she thought she was 100% Samoan, which it doesn't really exist because we had our families going all over the place marrying.
Yeah.
Um, and she was almost more Tongan than she was Samoan,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And she was kind of in
yeah.
shock. But the reality is it's the same people. It just
If you,
happened that she picked up more of the DNA markers from over there.
yeah, no, and that's probably good. She probably after I'm telling you, Dua, after that discovery, she's probably gonna learn some history, right?
Mhm.
Gonna go figure out Polynesian history because yeah, people will take a shock to that when you don't know much about your Polynesian history. Then yeah, I can see that shocker on her face.
Um, just my opinion, point of view. I have heaps of cousin friends that are Afekasi Tonga Hamo. I don't know why, but growing up, they seem to be more in tune with their Tongan culture and speak more Tongan. That's been kind of my observation too. Not always, but on average, that seems to be the case. Um, but hey, that's just one-sided observation there. Another question here, Masi, you can tackle. Besides Tonga having the political structure, what are your thoughts on what mental advantage the Kautonga had to be the force they were?
Mm. Well, I think a perfect advantage is when you're when right when you've kind of run a Polynesian nation, a vast nation of what bigger than most countries in land size, right? When
Yeah,
you use the ocean, you're talking about a very sophisticated, complex situation that you've dealt with many times. And the perfect question is when is it Pau Tuitonga Pau when he came approach Cook,
James Cook.
ask him,
Yeah,
James Cook, what are you doing here? You know, so I think that's a huge to me that's a huge benefit of Tonga just surviving colonization is just because of that knowledge that's passed down from Paulahi, the Tuitonga, from his understanding and that knowledge being passed down. So that to me that was the biggest advantage, and that advantage, and then we've kind of touched upon being able to transition power to the Tuikan Polu and how that event kind of played out, and then what made Tonga today, and how having the Tongan constitution, which is the oldest in the southern hemisphere, other than maybe Argentina, but that's pretty remarkable for our people. But to me, it's just that mental side of knowing who you are, what your capabilities are, and understanding when you see new faces come over, they're doing the same thing what you used to do when you went around all of the Pacific. And I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if our people went they went all the way to Japan and China, and that's a different set of people and stuff. And like I said, when we talked about Tongans, really they were not in awe when the Palangi showed up, because they were used to seeing different people, in my opinion, and having that knowledge is probably the biggest factor.
No, 100%. And that's kind of the what we're talking about. Like Mussy was mentioning earlier, there are certain advantages of being at the root. You're exposed to more ideas, you're exposed to different ways of thinking, and ideas that are brought from throughout the nation. Like we talked about, all like in Rome, all roads led to Rome. And what does
Mm,
that mean? That not just means like financial, right? And political, and any type of other material advantage, but it also means where ideas come as well, right?
yeah,
When one of, let's say, one of the islands discovers something new, something that works, when they would come to Tonga, obviously they would be like, hey, look
yeah,
at this new thing,
mm,
right? Look at this new thing, and everybody's like, oh man, that's awesome. It's like, hey,
yeah,
look, we found this huge bird in New Zealand.
yeah,
Look at what we brought. Like, check this thing out. We never seen this before. So
mm,
it's not that we're saying that somehow magically that the Tongans had some kind of superpower, or whatever. It was just a product of being at the root, and that has certain
yeah,
advantages. and
yeah,
um and it's no different than like the next generation who has more access to certain technology, right? It's just by pure exposure,
mm,
long-term exposure, that they develop these advantages. And we're all products of our time and our location. And so hopefully that kind of gives you some response there, some good feedback on that, Alexander. Well, and this is when you say kind of like the aura and so forth, Alexander. It's I truly believe this. It's understanding who your ancestors were and what they did gives you a lot of confidence, right?
mm,
There's a reason why there are genetic advantages, right? If your dad played in the
yeah.
NBA or the
That's a good
NFL,
example.
right?
Yeah,
You not only get the genetic advantages of height and strength, but it's the knowledge. That's the most important part. It's the knowledge that your father can transfer to you. And all the things that took him 5 years to learn, he can teach you in six
yeah,
months, 2 months,
yeah,
right? So really a lot of it is just being from the root that has a huge impact on giving you, quote unquote, the belief that you
yeah.
can go and do something. Any thoughts on that, Mas?
No, no, I agree. I was gonna use the sports analogy with the whole your dad being an NFL, and if you're the son of an NFL player, you definitely
More
you're
than
gonna feel
likely,
confident
yeah,
entering high school football. Like, dude, I already know my dad's NFL. I know what to do. Like, you're gonna be a very confident person.
yeah. Any thoughts on this, Masi? Here's Nacho. I thought I was 100% Tongan until I found out my great grandpa is from Kanukupolu. Now I believe I have Samoan Toto. High probability, wouldn't you say, Masi?
High probability. We're talking about when the Tuigang Polu um started. We're talking about a mass migration, specifically in Upolu, of thousands. And we're talking if we're talking about warriors coming in those big boats, I'm talking about maybe 500 people coming. That's just one trip, and we're talking about many trips from Upolu coming to
Over
settle.
hundreds of years,
Yes, because if you think about it, when the Tuikon Polo was created, it needed followers. It needed loyal people to follow them. So obviously, you're gonna get that people from Upolu come settle the west side of Tongatapu, and because the Tui Tonga and Tui Hatagalawa were probably taking over a lot of the people doing their work. People that was already been in Tonga, so they're not gonna
take away
neglect
from them. Yeah.
neglect their duties that they've been doing for thousands of years within their family to go serve one of the lesser chiefs of in that side. So obviously, that's why they brought so many. They married high noble women in Upolu and brought their whole families and extended families with
Yeah.
them.
It seems like the greatest weapon for politics is back then, and maybe even still now, is marriage.
Yep.
It's a fast track to build that relationship and find loyal people on your side.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, even in today's modern marriages, I hear some Tongan friends who they're the older son. Their parents don't want the oldest son to marry somebody who's number three of the kids. They want them to marry another
Number
oldest
one.
daughter of somebody else because that's a high influence person that gonna help that family. Like even in today,
in
within
the
Tongan. within Tonga, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
Their firstborn, first girl or first boy, or
who
the
they marry.
who they marry. Like parents have a big influence. I won't say arranged marriages, but it's just say it's a huge influence.
Whatever is that the very next thing from arranged, whatever you want to call it, it's only 1 degree away from arranged.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Not 100% water bears. No one is 100% anything anymore. Throughout Polynesia and now in the world that we live now, around the world, right? I mean, it's kind of cool. I've seen half Tongan, half Japanese, Chinese. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all over the map. Once heard the Masai system was installed by the Tuitonga. Have you guys heard of this? Best of luck. What are your thoughts on this, Masi?
Installed by the Tui. I don't think so. I think the Matai system was really installed, especially when the presence of the fracturing
Yeah,
of the Tui Tonga was not in Samoa. And Maria Toa really kind of started that with the Tuambasanga district. And that's how the Matai system kind of really started. And probably the Matai system is really what many of the Polynesian family really functioned in, except Kamehameha that really took the stance of coming from Kona, which is Tonga, you can kind of say in the big island of Hawaii, really kind of taking a stance of kind of carrying out like
I'm
a
gonna
Tui
unify.
Tonga,
Yeah,
unify my islands here. I'm not going to function like a Matai. But Matai system, to my understanding, was created especially when the Tui Tonga's presence was not strong in Samoa.
no, 100%. I agree. That was to fill the void of the Tuitonga's
Yes.
unified leadership, and in many ways, it's an ingenious system because it allows for stability. Because if you don't come up with a system that shares the power, what leads to war, right?
Mm,
It's going to lead to, if we're not finding out a way where we can manage and what we call decentralize the power, and it's very difficult. That would be a great thing to try and understand how really the Matai system came to be without breaking into
mm,
war. Like that to me is a very interesting thing. That's not an easy thing to achieve. And it would be kind of interesting to understand how that system came about. And as we mentioned in some of our other podcasts, Matafa, the development of that system is actually, once again, one of those ideas
mm.
that saved Tonga in the long run,
Yeah.
right? Because
Tui
Tupou the
Polo.
first
Yeah.
did not have direct inheritance to the Tui Tonga or the Tui Hatakalaua. However, he could get access to the Tui Kanukupolu if he could get the votes necessary, right?
Yes.
And so actually, that's what's kind of interesting. And that's why we're saying these new ideas that were developed in Polynesia, the Polynesian nation, these ideas always made their way to Tonga. And that's what allowed Tonga to survive.
Mm,
Because if Tupou the first did not have the Tongan version of the Matai system in the Tuikanukupolu, highly unlikely he would have been able to consolidate enough power to unify Tonga. But then what does he do once he unifies Tonga? He reverts back to the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatakalaua method of inheritance, not by voting system. So
mm.
those are kind of the interesting kind of little tidbits that
Yeah.
really, honestly, I never thought of. But one of the things that came out of the conversations here on the podcast that were kind of like interesting tidbits to kind of discover together here.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna add on to it with the Matai system because that's what saved Tonga because that's what the Tuikanupolu exercise of passing authority of the Tuikanupolu title. But it's funny once the Tupolo first was installed as a Tuikanupolu through the Matai system, right? He reverted back to what the Tui Tonga and Tui Hatagalawa have been doing with the father to son inheritance. And not only that, the guys who the noblemen in Tonga that supported the Tui Polu, even their titles are going from son, father
Yeah,
to son. So it's not like how Matais run it now with certain families having like a vote and they have
voting
to come and
amongst
agree.
themselves.
So I just find that very interesting. So obviously it works, and then people are just going, oh, we'll go back to what the Tuitongas do with going. I think they just wanted it's easier to consolidate power that way,
Power.
maybe that
Yeah.
that way. So yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Ah, George, very important to go to your family reunion so you don't marry a cousin you never knew or knew about. Yeah, well, I tell you right now, you know what's funny is they know about the cousin, but they still have the marriage.
They still.
As, but this comes back to like what you said, Masi, right? As long as the mom and dad of both sides think, hey, politically and
Yeah,
strategically, this makes sense. Oh, we're not that close. But trust me, if they don't agree with the politics and the
yeah,
strategy, all of a
yeah,
sudden it's like, oh, you guys are cousins and you grew up
yeah,
together. We
yeah,
can't have
yeah.
this.
They'll
We
they'll
can't
think of
have
all the
that.
excuses. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. I mean, we just mentioned that and discussed that, George. 100% agreed. That is
Mm,
definitely an idea that came from Samoa, and it came at the right time and played a critical role in allowing Tonga to maintain independence. So, all right, I think we've kind of burned through
nice.
going through the comments. So the next piece is we were able to find a video that let me see if I can pull it up. A video that discusses an archaeological study that was done in Manua.
Mm.
Let me see to discuss. Oh, let's go through a couple more comments here that are popping up. Oh, Yahweh. Clyde Moore Nacho to join and sing a song. Shh. Oh, Yahweh.
Maria.
Let's think about that a little bit more. Number one, make sure it's an appropriate song. And number two, I'm okay as long as the banjo is not too loud. If the banjo is not too loud from Nacho, we might make that happen.
Maria Gautama.
Oh, Yahweh. Water Bears, you're being promoted to Hiva Solo.
Oh shit! Takwe, Waterbirds didn't discuss with the other guys. Ano to tabes yan na.
Manua has high mountains as the Langis or Langis metaphorically, but Tonga Tapu has no. Agreed, Noah. No pushback there. Tonga is pretty much as flat as a pancake. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. Well, I mean, and we'll go through this. Noah, we have a video that we'll walk through, and we'll see what the scientific evidence is found regarding the Tu'i Manua and what they find. Let
Mm.
me just pull up the video here real quick. So never had the
Good
chance,
question.
Masi,
Good
to
question.
go. You never had the chance to go to Manua while you were there.
No, no,
Was that part of the mission?
yes, yes, it
Okay.
was. It was just during that time, because Mano is very difficult to get to, and I guess they didn't have any missions. It's not all the time; it's always open, because
Mm.
usually those Matai rules and stuff can only have certain times when missionaries can go and preach, and then sometimes the chief don't want LDS missionaries; they want to keep their church there. So it was kind of those
Oh, it's a little
politics.
bit more political then, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
To the Polynesian nation, ask the hard questions and stay curious. And till next time, be safe and have a good one. Thank
Oh,
you. Peace.
see ya.